Hey everyone, welcome to the Oasis podcast. I'm your host, Miss AJ. Thanks for tuning in. An oasis is something that provides refuge, relief, or a pleasant contrast, and that is exactly what you will find tuning into the Oasis podcast. This is a space where I and special guests will be cultivating intentional and honest conversations about life's journey. Subscribe everywhere you listen to podcasts and watch us on YouTube now. Hey y'all, thank you for tuning back into the Oasis podcast. So I see quite a few of y'all have been listening to part 1, and yeah, some of y'all had some things to say, and I'm happy that it's generating conversation. So without further ado, here is part 2. Even thinking back to my mom, and I think I am speaking about my mom in rose tinted glasses because our relationship is way better now. So for me, I think that if I sit here and I started sitting here thinking about like the past, and I was kind of like, ooh, maybe what I said earlier wasn't necessarily true. But now our relationship has grown and it's so different. So I see my mother as a different person. And what you said, Ayanna, is true. Is the person that mother used to be, I did not like that. I used to say that I hated my mom. I ain't even gonna hold you. Like, I used to say that shit. But now, over the past, I want to say past 10 years or so, it's changed tremendously. No, not even 10 years. It hasn't even been 10 years. I'm lying. Maybe 7 years or so. It's changed tremendously. In thinking back, and y'all know how much I talk about my grandma. I love my grandma. But y'all know how grandmas can be, right? They are different with their grandkids than they are with their children.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Honey, my grandma was nothing to play with. And I always thought that was funny, but I really saw my mother and my grandma's dynamic. And I'm like, it makes perfect sense why you were the way you were. Like, my grandma I've never heard my grandma say a con word to my mother. I'm being dead ass. Like never on some, you look nice, I love you. I've never heard her say that. Never. She always was digging at my mom about something. And my mom just used to take it and roll it. Just, all right, whatever. But now I'm just like, yeah, I'm pretty certain this is why you're like this with my sister. Like, I'm pretty certain this is why you're like this. I think even times with me, she said some wild shit to me before. I can't even lie. I'm not even gonna sit here and lie to y'all. She has said some wild shit to me. But at the same time, she was always like this with my brother. You feel me? Always like,
always.
You know what I'm saying? Oh. With me, I was the youngest, so she always coddled me, I think, a little bit. So I didn't get it as bad as my sister. But then as I did become a woman, there were times she would take jazz at me. But my personality, mama and not that I got disrespectful, but I ain't play that. Okay? Like, I would be quick to be like, I'm not doing this. And I'll walk away honestly like that. Whereas my sister, she'll probably do a little more back and forth, or kind of, she's passive aggressive. So she'll just be like, whatever, I don't care type thing. Some mother would think that she could keep going. I don't, we're not doing that. I don't do that. I don't do that. So yes, you did touch on that. It probably came for the fact that my grandma probably never said, I love you. It probably came for the fact that even towards the last days of my grandma being alive, my mother was the one taking care of her, busting her ass. And my grandma cussed her out almost every day. Like, legit, for real. And my mom never really talked about their relationship either. Even after my grandma passed. The anniversary of my grandma passing, her birthdays and stuff, she'd just be like, yeah. And then that would be it. Like, it wouldn't be any really real expression. And in all honesty, this sounds crazy. And I saw that as a positive thing, but it probably has more to it. And I would say that to anybody. I feel my mother opened up once my grandma passed, if that makes sense. She was just brighter. She was just more open. She was just a different woman. Yeah. Yeah. That's sad. Like that is sad, to be honest, thinking about it in that way.
I mean, but it makes sense though. Our parents were once someone's child. Our grandparents was once someone's child. And again, I don't know. I can't speak on my mother's experience of growing up. I know that the woman I saw her be with my grandmother has lived with me since I was 3 years old. And my grandmother passed away when I was 30. So from 3 to 30, my grandmother was in the home with us and always around and quite independent. Even in her older age, my grandmother died 5 days before she was about to turn 99. And, you know, my mother was her caregiver, sole caregiver in the final years of my grandmother's life. And my mother basically built her life around Merle. and was enmeshed in my grandmother. And when my grandmother passed, of course, my mother was devastated. My mother is an only child. So she's always had, my mother had her mother for 72 years. So it was a devastating blow to my mother. And from what I could see, they had what looked like a healthy relationship. But it's cracks underneath what we don't know. It's stories and it's narratives and it's shit that we are not made aware of. I often used to think that my mother didn't want to be a mother. I know that my mother loved me. I was the daughter she always wanted. My mother had 2 sons before she had me. By the time my mother had me at 41. So she was well into adulthood when she had me. She wasn't a young, struggling mother. She was married to my father. They had a son. My brothers were 14 and 9, so she had older children. She was making money as an administrator in DOE. So by all accounts on paper, Anne was ready to receive me and have me. But I never really felt that my mother wanted to be a mother. And I think I was judging my mother based on fictional mothers like Claire. Who doesn't love Claire Huxtable?
She was amazing.
I used to tell my mother, and I was doing this purposely to be wicked, like when I was younger and she would get me mad. I'd be like, well, Claire Huxtable is my real mother anyway. I used to say that. And my mother would be like, well, go find Claire ass and tell her to feed you. That would be her reply. But, I used to hold Claire Huxtable, which is a character that somebody wrote, up on a pedestal and compare my real life mama to Claire Huxtable, and my mother would fall short every single time. But definitely there were things in her childhood who shaped her as a person. There were things that she experienced that shaped her inability to say, I love you. Her inability to be huggy and kissy. My mother used to, when I used to cry as a child, my mother, you know how a child cries, they'll fall, they'll cry, and you'll be like, oh, come in, you'll baby them, or what's wrong, why are you crying? Anne would be like, I can't understand you when you cry. Could you use your words? Could you get it together? Because I don't understand you when you cry. Come on back to me when you calm down. And I'd be like, yo, but where's the comfort in that? Where's the embrace in that? And I'm a person who is very expressive. I'm always telling folk I love them. I'm always loving on people. I'm always ready to give a hug. And I think it's because I felt like I didn't get that in my interactions at home.
Right.
But I had to see my mama for who she was. I had to realize she went through some trauma that was outside of me that impacts the way she interacts with me. And I know without a doubt my mother loves me, but I know my mother is flawed. She is not a perfect person and does some fucked up things. But I had to come to a point, because I used to say I felt like it was a job being her daughter. And I used to actually say I had to parent my mother. And I had to tell myself one time, like, you need to parent yourself. In the ways that you didn't get it when you were younger, you need to give that to yourself. You're not parenting your mother. Your mother is not your responsibility. Because my mother conditioned me to believe that she was my responsibility. And I was like, she's not your responsibility. You don't have to carry the burden of your mother. You can separate, you can move on, you can create boundaries, you can love from afar, you can take a break, you can put her ass on ice, on timeout. You don't need to parent your mother. You need to pour into you. And that was when I just started to build stronger boundaries, because having boundaries with my mother was hard as hell. I'm in a 1-bedroom apartment. Me and my mother had a house fire in 2017 and were burned out of our childhood home. And my mother is still not back in the home because of construction issues. And I was blessed with this apartment. Somebody hooked me up. This was a hookup and a blessing. It's a 1-bedroom apartment. It is enough space for me. And Anne was like, well, I guess I'm coming in with you. And I was like, in a 1-bedroom?
No, sis, I love you, but no.
On my couch? And I was going to let it come. And then somebody was like, what? Other mothers in my life and other mentors in my life was like, what is wrong with you? You are sitting here near tears about the fact that your mother is about to move in with you. Why don't you just tell her no? And I was like, tell her no? I could do that at 33? And it was like, yeah, you can do that. And honestly, to tell the truth on myself, to snitch on myself, I wasn't even brave enough to tell her no. I complained about it so much to other people that somebody went and said, your mother don't want you to. And then my mother came and confronted me, and I was like, well, yeah, actually, I don't. Like, I wasn't even brave enough to confront her because I had been conditioned to just, all right, Ann gonna do what she gonna do. And you just have to deal with it. And that was how I knew to operate with her. And then I had to like man up and be like, yeah, no, I don't want you to live on my couch. No, that's going to drive me crazy. You can't move in here. There's not enough space for us to be up under each other. And it was hard. And my mother played the guilt game, played the cuss out game. And, oh, well, you could have said something. I ain't want to live in your little apartment, no way, type of shit. And then I was like, okay, but so I'm glad we're on the same page that you're not moving in. That's all that matters is that you're not moving in. But it was hard. It's so difficult. It's so difficult when you have such contention in a relationship to try and stand up for yourself. And it makes it difficult to stand up for yourself in other areas in your life.
That's a fact.
But it comes from a cycle, yeah. It's something in her childhood, something in her life fucked her up, and she's miserable. And now misery loves company.
Yeah, that's a fact. Like, I guess my next question to y'all is, how do you feel, because you brought it up, Ayanna, how do you feel, both of you, this lack of mothering, right? Or just this type of mothering you received kind of shaped and formed you? I know for me, growing up, I always thought it was a part of me, like, oh, I'm just not affectionate. Like, I'm just not, that feely kind of girl. And the reality situation is that my mother didn't do that with us. Like, she ain't had time for us like that. You feel me? I fed you, I clothed you, move from me. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I thought that was normal. I didn't really realize it was abnormal until maybe high school, when my friends would want to hug and stuff, and I just be like, what you doing? like, chill. And then I started dating, and then the dudes is just like, what's wrong with you? Why don't you and I'm like, oh, I've always been like this. What are you talking about? Like, we don't do this as a family. We don't do this. And it's like, oh shit, maybe, what's up with that? Right. Like, and then in realizing, seeing that, yeah, my aunts, they weren't like that with their kids. My grandma wasn't like that with her children. You know what I'm saying? And it took now I think the family has changed, but it took real effort to change that narrative, to be like, okay, we can say I love you and we can hug, but this is something that happened for us in adulthood. Like, that wasn't something that was a thing. And I think for me, that was something that I had to learn to unpack. Talking about feelings, saying I love you, being affectionate, just being vulnerable, period. My mama used to say to me, y'all, I used to like to cry. I was sensitive. And that's another thing. That's another reason why now I'm thug life. You know what I'm saying? With people. Because I'm like, I used to like, when you're a kid, your feelings are hurt. You cry. You sad, you cry. I want to be like, you cry too much. Save your tears for my funeral. Look at your face, Pat. I laugh now because that's the only thing to do at this point, right? Because I know I'm not in that space no more, but I can tell you, and you could tell, I still remember the words. You feel me? So like, hearing that growing up, whenever there'll be a legit reason for me to cry. I'll be like,
but she would make you feel like it wasn't right.
And so I wouldn't cry until I was steaming mad. That was the only time I allowed myself to cry. I was pissed. But if I was happy, if I was feeling joy, if I was legitly upset, I wouldn't cry. And people would just be like, yo, what the fuck? Like, what's wrong with you? And I thought that was a badge of honor, not realizing that that's not okay. That wasn't healthy, So how do you feel that, the dynamics you had with your mothers kind of affected you as a woman?
Okay, so I'm going to dive right in. I was not the affectionate type of mother towards my own children. I was very militant. I was very strict. It was just like, you do what I say, or it's the highway. And their father used to say, chill out. They're only 1 and 3 years old. And I'm like, no, they need to do this, and they need to be like this, and it needs to be perfect this way and that way. And especially because, he was always babying them, in my opinion, and teachers have said it too. I always felt like I had to be the bad cop. I'm like, okay, well, it can't be lollipops and gumdrops all the time since that's what you're doing with them. So I was automatically pushed into that role. So they would come up and hug me and I'll be like, oh, okay, oh yeah, just like a real quick pat on the back. All right, yeah, that's nice. And it wasn't until him and I broke up that I realized that I had to change the whole trajectory of how I was mothering my kids at 2 and 4. But yeah, I wasn't accustomed to that, I mean, even my stepmother, like, she wasn't toxic at all. If anything, I have nothing but utmost respect for her. She was always talking to me, giving life advice. But I always felt a slight disconnect because, I didn't come out of her bowels. So it just felt a little different being the only kid in the house. But that had nothing to do with her. That had everything to do with me. But even with her, she wasn't the huggy, affectionate type. And I don't know if that's a Caribbean, West Indian thing where you don't hug your children, you don't kiss them, you don't really,
I think that's just a black diaspora thing.
Maybe,
Yeah.
like,
everything links down to slavery. And that's probably because the parents are afraid to love their kids because kids would get snatched away from you.
They were losing their children, so they had to toughen them up. I couldn't coddle you.
Yeah.
Your life is in danger. I can't hug you. Your life is in danger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that just got passed down. It was like, whoa, you can do that.
We can break
okay
that.
now.
Like, we don't take it no more. We can let that narrative go, that slave narrative go.
Yeah.
I mean, they did other things to show you they love you. I mean, like they cooked you dinner, they'll cook your favorite meal.
Right.
But to physically say it, like, I mean, I don't remember when my birth mother actually told me she loved me. That's probably bad. But I remember my stepmother telling me, like, in my teens, I love you. And, that was like a whole family affair, and all 6 of us were in the house crying and boo-hooing. It started with my father, But outside of that, there was no, it wasn't like the TV show mommies. Like, my favorite TV show mom, I ain't gonna lie to you guys, was Harriet from Family Matters.
Oh yes, Harriet.
She was my favorite.
She's another famous mama. Yeah.
She was my favorite. Or even Moesha. Like, we had Moesha's mom, right?
Dee.
Yeah. That mom. Yep.
So Dee was fly.
Yes, she was. She was patient as hell though with Moesha though.
She was, because Moesha was a brat.
Okay.
But that's
okay. But anyway, digress.
We ain't gonna go there.
We don't go there. But all of those things definitely shape you. And I'm just glad that I was able to kind of turn the ship of my life around and actually show my kids the warmer side of me.
Was that shit not the most uncomfortable thing in life? And that's the weird thing about it. It's like you want it, you want to do it, but it felt so
weird,
uncomfortable. Yeah,
I was on the opposite spectrum. I was opposite of that. Like, I was like, oh, I'm gonna tell everybody I love them. I love you. I love you. I love you. Oh, man, you get a hug. You get a hug. Like, I was so craving it that I was like, I'm just gonna embody. I'm very, very. I'm a Gemini anyway, so I'm already expressive. But I'm extremely expressive with the people that I love. I feel like giving flowers while people can enjoy them. And that was a lesson I learned when my brother was murdered in 2006. And it was like, oh, I'll never again not tell someone their significance in my life, because I then realized that death is real and can happen at any time. And that woke me up in a different way. But I was a very loving child. I was a very vulnerable. I feel sad right now. Like, I was very expressive. And I always wanted to I love you. I always wanted to do something that my mother would acknowledge as being proud of or praise me for, to the point where I used to feel like I was on a pedestal. Like, I'm always lights, camera, action. What do you need me to do?
Mm-hmm,
Like,
mm-hmm.
you need me to dance now, mama, I'ma dance. You know what I'm saying? And it was always a show. It was always, this is what else I'm accomplishing. And so it definitely gave me an imposter syndrome. Like, you ain't good enough. Somebody didn't acknowledge you for that. That wasn't good enough. It definitely had me look for superficial acknowledgments. So the first little nigga that told me I was this, that, and the third, but it was superficial, I clung to it because I felt like I didn't get it in the home. And it also made me just distrust genuine compassion from folks. Because, you know, my mother I used to be like, I love you. And she'd be like, yeah, love. I'm like, I mean, I guess that means you love me back. I guess that means, like, my mother would just say the word love. Like, she wouldn't be like, I love you. She'd be like, love. And I'd be like, okay. She still texts like that. She'd be like, good night, love. And I'd be like, yeah, I love you too, girl. Like, you know, and there was no hugging. There was not, you know, Ann will come on. Ann's coming over here tomorrow. She'll be over here at 1:00. And we'll sit on the couch next to each other, but ain't no like, let me lean on your, let me lay on your lap. Let me lean on your shoulder.
Yeah.
What you doing? I'm trying to watch my news. I'm trying to watch my, you know.
Yeah.
So it made me so much more compassionate. I just went to the other end of the spectrum. I was like, I'm going to hug and kiss on everybody. I kiss on everybody's child if they let me. If you got a baby in your arms and the baby you kiss them, I'm like, I love you. You are the best thing in the world. Like, because I didn't get it in the way that I thought that I should have gotten it. But where I have been adversely affected by my mother and my relationship is around using my voice in conflict. So I was adversely affected by my relationship with my mother because I am not a person that really speaks on things when I have an issue and I have a conflict. And I know that most people think that I am real direct, but it takes so much for me to like tell somebody about themselves because, you know, I've always just been conditioned to just hold it in and take it and deal with it and kind of put my feelings aside, especially when it comes to like mother authority figures in my life, because I had, you know, my biological mother and then I have other women in my life who are mother figures. And when they do some problematic stuff, it is so hard for me to be like, yo, that was harmful. That was problematic for me. This doesn't work for me. And I realize it's because my mother conditioned me to just take it.
This runs so deep. And I think it could explain so much with the people we interact with, right? We're here 3 successful Black women in our 30s, right? Talking about this. We've probably gotten to a point now because we chose, right, to acknowledge and because we wanted to heal and so that we can be better for the future. But thinking of the people who haven't put the connection together, right? Think of people who are currently parents transferring, right, this type of behavior onto their children right now. But as us being women who are, you know, in 30s dating these men out here, thinking about a lot of men who've probably encountered a lot of
toxic mothers.
That they have toxic mothers and they either know this and they just be like, fuck it, or they really don't see how toxic their mothers. We doing a part 2 to this? Are we going to do a part 2? We need to, and I'm gonna try to get one of my homies on here too, because
listen, that was my ex. I used to tell my ex, I'm not your mother. I will not pay for how you see your mother. And I used to remind him, I won't give all the tea because that's not my family business to give. But, you know, his mother had him very young and had to make some very difficult challenges. She had him in her early teens and had all 3 of her boys, my ex and his 2 brothers, before she was 20. And she had to do some things. And I was like, you can't judge your mother for having to feed you. You might not agree with what she had to do to feed you, but you were fed. And you have to see her as a person. And he used to really be like, oh, you can't trust no woman. All women lie. All women is hoes. All women is. And I used to be like, nah, nah, bro, you need to go to therapy and work that shit out. Because he also had issues with his daddy. I said, you need to work out both your toxic parent issues because you parent the same way because he had a child. And the cycle was not broken because he wasn't ready to address his anger and the trauma of growing up as his mother's child and his father's child. And it definitely played a part in our relationship.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I can ever really trust you because all women is liars.
Honey,
no, that's not true.
My ex. Now, her and I got along, but I think because she respected strong personality, she respected women who stood on her ground and wasn't on some, you trying to storm my back up. So I think that's why her and I got along. But she did a number on his ass, and I'm gonna be real about that. Like, there was so many instances that him and I have, and we're literally having regular conversation, or we can have a disagreement, and I just be like, "This is my stance. I hear you. Let's just move on." And he constantly would just do certain things and badger and kind of go, and he admitted to it. Of course, he would admit to it later or whatever, but it's because he couldn't stand up to his mother. So he felt that he constantly had to win in arguments with me. Hunty, we're not doing this. You need to go to therapy. That's one, because I used to stress that very much so. But talking therapy, the things you need to talk about. Don't be talking about you and I. That's not important. Talk about you and your mom. Right. Because you need to mama. You need to address that. You know what I mean? That she was constantly belittling him, constantly like never really acknowledging his accomplishments, constantly like babying and putting up his brother, and then for him it's like, oh, you here, type things. And that it was legit. These things weren't made up. Like, I saw some of it, but my thing is this is like, you're still in a way you're allowing. You have yet to tell her in a non-confrontational way, I don't like this. This is how you're hurting me. Like, and to see maybe she would respond, but then you're carrying this shit into the relationship and trying to put it on me. No, sir. Here's the difference. I ain't gotta be with you, nor have to deal with you. You feel me? Like, you gotta handle that. And I think that is one thing, because also I have other exes that the relationship probably wasn't as confrontational, but they really had issues with their moms, and it really seeped into how they were dealing with you, and they refuse to acknowledge that part, and they want to say it's you. No, sir. If this is a common pattern in your relationships, guess what the common denominator is? You. So I'm gonna need you to handle that, and they just will refuse, or even if they did acknowledge it was on some. They felt powerless. They never going to change.
So many broken people walking around here. Broken babies. So many broken children. Because even though they're adults, grown adults that are just stunted because of their childhood and because of their experience, because of the toxicness of their childhood, and they're broken, and they don't even know that they're broken, or they're not doing the work to try and fix the broken parts of them. And it's so prevalent. We meet so many people that are just stuck in the trauma that they've experienced.
And to add on to that, what the sad part about it? If you're a certain type of person, maybe even if you're a spiritual person, a person who can just feel people's energies, a lot of times it is really people you feel are like they're internally really good people, right? Like, they have a lot of love to give. You feel that they really want to, but this thing is such a big part of them that you just can't take the whole person, because this thing is just too much to deal with. And that's the reality of the situation. And I think for those of us who can see people in that light, and you say, you know what, this is too much for me, I'm gonna back out of here, I'm good. It probably just adds on to their feeling of like whatever their mother probably said, and I'm not lovable. And the fact is that you are, but you got to love you first, right? Like, this, you have to start that healing before someone can really truly hold on to you. And you have to tackle the big old elephant in the room. Talk to your mama, bro. And even if the conversation doesn't go how you would imagine, right? With bouquet of flowers and like, oh my God, this is amazing. At the very least, you got what you need to get out, and it can start the healing process for you. Absolutely. So, and I think that people are so scared of that conversation, and it is absolutely terrifying. Don't get it twisted. Again, what is it? 8 years ago? How many years ago? The conversation I started with my mother. It took this long for me and my mother to be good. You feel me? And she was not with the shits when we first started talking. Okay. Oh, you trying to? She was not with it. However, I was determined. You feel me? I was determined, and there were months I didn't talk to her. You know, because she said something loud to me. She didn't want to receive what I was saying to her. And I said, okay, you're going to sit with that for a little bit. I'm going to be over here and I'm not answering phone calls and I'm not calling you, you know? And I was younger then. Of course, my mindset was a little more stern now. I probably wouldn't have done it the same if it was now. However, it needed to be done. And now we are completely indifferent. We're not even in the same book no more. You feel me? Like completely different. But so I think it's something that's necessary to do. And I don't know, Patty, if you wanted to add on to, the talk of me and these, men who have been broken down by their mothers.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of my exes, similar story, he looked just like his father. And, mother and father were no longer together. So guess who got the brunt of the BS that, the father couldn't get? He used to get it. So when him and I first started dating, he would always be yelling at his mom. Oh, be quiet. Shut up. And for me, I was just like, you talk to your mama like that?
Right. That's some white people shit.
Okay. Right. And she'd go upside your life.
Listen, I was like, don't get it twisted. You might live in a white neighborhood, but you would have tried that with my mama or my daddy. You would have lost your whole front line of tooth. They would have thought you was a cutty in these streets. You would have lost all your teeth, okay? And, when I really looked at the dynamic closely, she favored the other sibling more because the other sibling looked like her and he looked like his father. So there was always that contentiousness going on between them. And the only time she would be nice to him is when she needed a favor. So he had a nickname and she used to call him by his nickname. Oh, I need you to, can you do this for me? Can you? And then as soon as he would do it, it's like right back to, oh, you don't ever do nothing right. You only worry about your friends. You don't worry about your family. And she was always telling him, you don't. So I was with a man that I literally, I don't care if he sees this or not, but I literally had to raise him because his mama ain't teach him how to cook. She barely taught him how to clean. And then she destroyed the man's confidence too. So I had to be all three of those things for him.
Yeah, his mama, his therapist.
Right. I had to be his lover, his girlfriend.
The thought of that is exhausting.
Just his pastor, his preacher.
And raise no man, as Kate Michelle said, because his mama couldn't do it. What makes stay the truth? But I digress. We talk about something else.
I mean, again, you know what? I learned from that experience that how a man deals with his mother is indicative of how he's going to treat you. Because what ended up happening, down the pipeline, he ended up putting his hands on me and disrespecting me just like how he disrespect her. I just waited my turn. So that's the word to all ladies out there. If that man is not respecting his mama and not giving her that clout that you brought me here, and even if though I think you may be disrespectful in the moment, I'm still gonna let you rock out and I'll talk to you later. If that man is not giving his mother that, just know that the way how he disrespect her, you waiting your turn. So I'm very careful now when I date. I want to know how you treat your mama. I'm not saying to be a mama's boy. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, do you give your mother that reverence? Do you pay that homage? Like, yo, you ruined your body for 40 weeks to bring me here.
But also,
Birdman would say, put some respect on her name,
Yeah, but that's a fact. That's a fact how he regards her. But it's just their relationship in general. Is it healthy? Are there healthy boundaries?
You have a healthy relationship. Right, because he can respect his mama and she wild as hell, like she crazy as fuck, like really tearing him down, but he's still respectful. Pay attention to men and their relationship with their mamas, because it is indicative of what they feel about all women.
Yes,
it's how they're going to raise their daughters. It's how they're going to love and respect their wives. It's how they're going to treat every other woman in their life. Is their mama is the first woman that they either love or hate.
Mm-hmm.
And every other woman is going to have to be in her shadow, period.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's real. That's a PSA right there.
That's a fact. You know,
I got another PSA.
Yeah.
Because Patty brought it up
Go
twice.
ahead, drop them gems, sis. Go on.
I've been wanting to bring this up, Patty, because you brought it up twice and mentioning that you look like your father and that your mother then in turn turned her assault and her anger that she had for your father onto you.
Yeah.
That is such a prevalent thing in Black families and with Black mamas. And you know, I used to call it the Evelyn syndrome because of Evelyn Braxton and the Braxton sisters.
Yeah.
If you never watched the Braxton Family Values, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Toni Braxton is 50-something years old. All of them women is in their late 40s and 50s, and they are still so damaged by their parents' divorce that happened 30 years ago. I was watching Real Housewives of Atlanta yesterday, the episode that came on Sunday, and Cynthia is getting married. And Cynthia was having a conversation with her mother about inviting her father to the wedding. And it was some toxic shit. And Cynthia was in her confession crying. Cynthia's 52 years old. And she was crying, saying, you know, I feel guilty sometimes about being born because my mother had to give up her life to have me. I was her first child and she had me so young. Your child should never.
Right.
Why would you feel guilty about your mother making
a decision? Right.
Your mother, listen here, parents. This is the PSA. Parents, your children do not pay for your mistakes and your choices ever. If you choose the wrong partner and you get pregnant, that was your fuck up. It's not your child's fuck up. You do not take that out on the child. That has nothing to do with the child that you decided to bring into this world. You better never let them feel any type of repercussion because of your fucked up choice. You decided to lay with that man. He wasn't fucked up when you was having his baby. He wasn't fucked up when you was taking dick. She wasn't fucked up when you was I'm just being honest because that is
girl, okay. She said what she said.
Child paying for their choice. I'm not paying for your choice.
No,
I'm not paying for your choice. You chose her when she wasn't shit. She was shit at one point because you chose her. My daddy was the shit at one point because you chose her. I'm not. You do not make your children pay for the choices that you made. You decide to get a divorce. You are severing ties with your ex. Yeah. They don't have to pay for their father's choices. Yeah. That was your choice to choose that man. They had nothing to do with that. And that has to stop in the Black family. That has to stop in the Black community. We have to stop that.
You're right. I want to jump right on in there. Because I swear you were telling like the fabric of my life story. When I actually broke up with and went through a divorce with my child's father, it was bad. Oh my God. Like it was court after court after court and throwing accusations. I don't care if this airs because I said what I said and it's in black and white, but he went out there on a smear campaign, went to my church, destroyed my name, told family court I was beating on my children, told lawyers I wasn't feeding my children. It was all of that. And I still had to be a mother. And I'm not going to lie, there were some days that I was frustrated and I got no help. So on top of that, he also said, since we breaking up, my mama and my sister are no longer available to you. And my mama also joined the bandwagon too. So I had custody and I still have custody of my children. And I had to bear this weight alone, plus go through a divorce alone, deal with my own personal issues of being a woman alone, deal with the scrutiny and everyone turning their back on me alone, and still had to be a mother. And I remember sitting in this same apartment many days crying and just like, wow, how did I get here? This is unbelievable. But one thing that I can truly say is that the love that I had for my children so I never took anything out on them. I never said, oh, you're just like your father. And oh, I never did any of that. If anything, I felt like, one of the superheroes. I was like a human shield. So I was taking all the daggers in my back just to like literally cover my children and to make sure that they felt loved and they felt protected and they felt safe and they felt nurtured. Now, if they get older, and as their father inclined to tell me, he's going to tell them our life story. I said, well, I hope you're prepared to open that, because by the time I'm done with you, they're not going to talk to you no more after they hear about the atrocities that you committed against me as their mother. So, I mean, at this point, whatever, time has passed, you let the chips die down and fall down. But I really made up in my mind in that point in time, like, okay, yeah, I chose him. I made a mistake, but the greatest blessing that came out of this was these two beautiful babies.
Mm-hmm.
They're dynamic, they're smart, they're lively, and I want to protect that. I want to nurture that. I want them to be greater than me. I want them to be smarter than me. I want, when they come home, they're coming home open arms. They're happy to be home. I want them to be in a space, and I want to cultivate that love, that this is home, mommy's here for you, whatever you need to talk about, just being that, everything it is that I didn't get from my toxic mother, my birth mother, let me correct that. From my toxic birth mother, I make sure I overcompensate and I give to them. So people like Miss AJ and other friends that come around, they come in and they're like, wow, I could feel the love in this place. I can feel the love in the environment, all these other things. And it's not a game, and it's not a talk, but I walk it out every day. And my kids are a testament to that, to the point they're going to school writing essays. I love my mommy. She calls me Noggin. And I love when she calls me my nickname, and we celebrate and we have traditions, and I feel special. Like that's what you want to produce. You understand? You don't want to keep perpetuating that generational curse and that dynamic, that it's a competition. No, I want my children to be billionaires by the time they hit 18.
I know that's right.
You know what I mean? Like, so the bar is set higher. It's never a competition. You're supposed to be better than me. You're supposed to be greater. You're supposed to achieve more. You're supposed to be smarter. You're supposed to be all these things. And I will apply the pressure, but it will all be done in love, and all from a place of, I just want you to succeed.
And I think
that's real.
We shouldn't be remiss to really acknowledge that our parents probably went through, like what you mentioned earlier, Ayanna, they probably went through some shit. You feel me? And the thing is we don't know, because they don't talk about it, right? We only left to guess. And so we're not trying to downplay that. However, just like we have a choice every day to get up and get ourselves ready to go to work or do something, right? To cook something, you have a choice to decide, do I want to be a different person than maybe who and what my mother was to me? Right. And that's what I'm hearing from you, Patty, is like you're choosing. It's intentional. Right. And I think that's the difference of being loyal, and then you making a commitment to your children. You're committed to be a different mother. And I think that is the difference. And if I would just leave the listeners or the watchers with gem, is that those of us who have encountered, maybe you don't have children yet, but you have encountered and you have had, a toxic mother, or even a toxic caregiver, right? Because it could be your grandma who raised you, your auntie who raised you, but it's a feminine person or female person that you can choose not to be them, right? And as opposed to just saying, oh, well, this is what they did, so I'm gonna keep doing it. Why would you? Remember how you used to feel. Remember how those things that they did made you feel. Think about who you are now. Would you want someone to be going through or went through to what you went through, right? And make that commitment to be something more and something better.
That's a PSA right there. Make a decision, a conscious decision. You don't have to keep the cycle going. I tell myself all the time, I want to parent every child that comes through me as if I'm parenting myself. So everything that I felt I needed as a child, everything that I know I needed as a child, I want to be able to have the capacity to give it to every child that comes through me and or to me in a way that I know that I deserve, and give them even more than what I deserve. And that's a choice. Like you said, it's a commitment and it's a choice and it's a conscious decision to be better, to be different, to be intentional, to be an intentional parent, to choose to parent.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are just thrusted into parenthood, but intentionally deciding I want to parent and I want to do it well, is something that takes a commitment. It's different.
Mm-hmm.
So that's important.
You don't have to be healed, but you have to be healing. You feel me? And I think people think you have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Absolutely not.
That doesn't even exist
at all.
There is no such thing as a perfect parent.
All
Nope. All parents fuck up.
All of them. And it's in your imperfections, though, that I think the beauty comes, right? This is how you learn. This is how, as a human being, but you also show your children, and I think we should definitely own up to that. And I honestly, I've heard this on another podcast before, again, another Caribbean parent and talking about how they would raise them and all that. I honestly feel we might have an advantage as well. Our generation is that we're in a time where we as individuals, we hold that space for each other to let it out. A lot of our parents did not. And I honestly feel it's a generational thing. They did not have that space to be like, I'm fucking up, or I'm angry, or I don't want to do this shit. You know what I'm saying? And this is why, or mom, you fucked me up. Like I don't think they had that space. And I'm always, Patty, you probably know me for this. I'm always the one that's just like, maybe just if you hold that space, they might open up. And I believe in change, because if my mama can do it, anybody can do it. And that's true. Child, listen to me. This is, a 60-some-year-old Haitian woman that raised 3 kids on her own, divorced, like all the things that you are not supposed to be, for her generation. She experienced it. And my mother was stern than a motherfucker. And to see her now, at least what she's with me now. I don't know her relationships with my siblings. I don't know if it grew. I can't speak to that. I can only speak to the relationship I've had with her and from where we started to be now. So for me, I'm always like, give your parents the space, because they are human, right? They do have an inner child that probably needs to heal, right? So and I think that if they really do feel they have a safe space to do and be, it may take a long time, because it took me a long time, but they're going to do it. I think I feel, excuse me, let me rephrase that. I feel that it may not be the way you want it. Let me, okay? But it'll be something. And
what you're describing is grace and absolute worthiness, is holding everybody in a space that they are absolute worthy. In spite of the worst thing they could ever possibly do, they still have worthiness, and you'll extend them grace. And that's hard. Business to do, but it's the way that God loves us. First of all, it's the way that God chooses to love us, with absolute worthiness and grace. And so I try to be, what would God do? I'm not God and I'm not perfect, but I try to love people in that way and see them with absolute worthiness and grace.
You know what kind of helped me through that process? And again, this is probably a whole nother topic and conversation, but think about the amount of dudes you done forgave for some bullshit. That done disrespected you, walked over you, did some crazy shit. And I got to a point I was just like, you let these motherfuckers do these?
You let somebody dusty
ass son do some wild shit to you, and then you can't extend that grace to your mama.
Right.
Honestly, that was really something that I thought about. Like, you were willing to like, I ain't gonna talk to you, but you still going back and forth with this dusty ass nigga. Nah, cut that shit off.
Put a pin in that though. Because I'm a strong believer. You don't let nobody steal your peace.
Period.
Okay, mama.
Don't get that twisted, for sure.
So if it's at a level that it is too toxic for you to have peace and deal with it, you better put that wall up and make sure it is strong.
Absolutely.
I can love you from afar.
And that is the difference. I can say that I believe in that very strongly. I told y'all, there were months that me and my mother did not speak through our transition. I did not speak to her. I didn't take her calls. I did not call her. But here's the difference. She realized, right? Acknowledging and hearing her out or losing my child. And I think she chose, you feel me? And it took her really realizing that, okay, maybe I need to take what she's saying seriously or I can really lose my kid. So now everybody ain't gonna do that though. Okay, so just be clear about that everybody is not going to do that. And there's some people that they're really just that fucked up. And they just can never step out of their own pain to see yours.
Yep.
But at least you tried. Though.
Right. I got a poem for y'all. This conversation is so good. I mean, I'm telling you, this could be part 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A series, honey. But I wrote a poem and I wanted to share it because it is so just on point with this conversation.
Yes, please, Harriet, return. Go on, sis.
And it's entitled Mother and Child. Maybe I was her greatest challenge, or perhaps I was her most brilliant honor. To think all I ever wanted to be was intentionally wanted. Have the privilege of her unwavering love. Expected her to carry me through life delicately, remembering that all I ever wanted was her. It hurts completely different when the home you've cherished no longer delights in your presence, when the sanctuary you've worshipped no longer carries the glory. It's crushing when the heart you heard beat lullabies to you from the womb is darkened with pride and malice, when the pedestal topples and the hope you had dies in its debris. It hurts when the thing most like me is the thing that hurts the most. Maybe I was her greatest challenge, or perhaps I was her most beautiful and brilliant honor. To think all I ever wanted was to be intentionally wanted, have the privilege of her unwavering love, expected her to carry me through life with delicacy, remembering that all I ever wanted was her. Mother and child.
Girl.
Ooh. 2 finger snap.
That is 1,000% applicable.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't even know if we should say any more.
Thank you.
Ladies, I thank you honestly for your vulnerability, right? I know this was not an easy topic to speak on, and for you all sharing your stories. I know that I do trust though that this will help others, right? I definitely hope that it sparks some conversation because I think we need to talk about these things, right? Because if we don't talk about it, it never gets addressed. Yes. And if it never gets addressed, guess what? It's going to keep on happening. We can't afford that. The future generation deserves so much more. And our ancestors don't work so damn hard. So we need to keep working harder, right? And their work was probably in a different way than what our task is, but we still need to do what we need to do to make sure that the future is a lot brighter for the babies. Those who are already here, Patty's little babies, I love those girls so much, or the ones that are going to enter this world in the future. And I thank you both so much for being here and sharing this story. If y'all have any last gems y'all want to throw, y'all want to throw your handles. I'm just a vessel. No.
Well, shout out to Oasis Podcast. Shout out to the Oasis Podcast. Thank you for the space. Just creating the space for us to have these really important conversations.
Thank you for trusting me to hold the space for y'all too, right? I appreciate that. So please, your handles, you want people to find you, what to look out for. So go ahead, plug yourselves. You know I love that. Go on. Look
out for me on Instagram at Patty Inspires.
Ooh, I like. Okay. I'm going to definitely put that in the notes. Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I see you, sis. No.
I'm ready. Okay. I think you're amazing, Patty. I think you're amazing, T. I am on social media under Harriet Return. That's my company. You can go to my website at www.harrietreturn.com. Follow me on YouTube. I drop a motivational message every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning. To give you a little bit of word of encouragement. I'm an author, so I'm writing some books that are about to drop real soon. Next month, my next book is coming out. And I'm just blessed to do what I do. So if you want to follow me at Harriet Returned, ED at the end, on all social media.
Yes. Thank you, ladies. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us. For today's Connection Corner, I leave you with, she let it go. She was ready to vibrate higher and become a magnet to miracles. Now she is in this place where everything feels right. Her heart is calm, her soul is lit, her vision is clear. She's at peace with where she's been and at peace with where she's headed. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Oasis podcast. I hope you were able to find something that resonated with you on your journey. Don't forget to subscribe everywhere you listen to podcasts and YouTube. Rate us and leave us a review and comment on Apple Podcasts or iTunes and YouTube. Share your favorite episode and like us on Instagram and Facebook. If you have any questions, comments, want to be a guest, or have show ideas, contact us at ajaysoasis@gmail.com. That's AAYJAYSOASIS@gmail.com, or direct message us on Instagram or Facebook.